Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we have a very special guest with us today, Jessica from Incoming Game, a Reboot Rewatch podcast.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about your show?
Sure. So I am a longtime Reboot fan, and I am rewatching Reboot with someone who has never seen the show before. So we're introducing him to the show as we go along, and we're just going through the episodes, episode by episode. We have a few special episodes where we got to interview one of the co-creators and writers on the show, Gavin Blair, which was really fun.
Ooh, I'm so jealous of that. That's so cool.
It was really cool. He reached out to us. We didn't even have to go to him, so it was really cool.
Nice. Yeah, I love that when creators and stuff are they're so passionate about the project that they work on that they actually go and look out for things like this.
Yeah. And I can't imagine there's a ton of Reboot podcasts out there. Not
that we could find when we started it up. We're double checking. We didn't want to take a spot that was already overfilled. So
Sure.
I think there's maybe one other we found. So
Gotcha. And in case any of our listeners are not familiar with Reboot, you should go watch it right now. It's all on YouTube. It's real good. It was the very first computer-generated cartoon. Is that correct?
First, TV show. So technically
VeggieTales
came first, but it wasn't a TV show.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was that was a series. It was a series, but it was more like
videotape.
Direct to video.
Yeah. I had seen all of Reboot until the end of the third season when it was. Well, I guess I hadn't seen all of it. I had seen most of it up in when it was first airing, and then I never watched the fourth season when it finally came out. But then when I found out about your podcast, I can't remember who mentioned it, but somebody on some other podcast mentioned it, I think. And then I was like, oh man, I want to listen to that. So I started listening to it, and I just got crazy about it. So I've watched almost all of it again so far. So, but I will say that the song at the end of the third season, it
gets me every time.
I still know off the top of my head. It's great.
I've gone to YouTube multiple times just to watch that song. I'm very excited to get to that episode again.
Oh,
there you go.
It's so good.
And yeah, at the moment you guys are, at least of the episodes that are out, you guys are just a few episodes into season 3. So when the show really starts to
we're really in the middle of things now. We're in good stuff.
Sure.
Oh man, the fight with the demon thing.
That was
my goodness, yeah, that they're coming up on that.
Oh man,
that's pretty good. Anyway, so enough about that. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually just got back from dinner with somebody with our friend Dave, and I mentioned Reboot, and he was like, oh my god, yes. He got so excited when it brought Reboot up.
Yeah. Jessica, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's pretty good start out to the week so far. Mm-hmm. I'm going to Baltimore for Labor Day coming up, so I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
Eat some crabs.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to be doing a one of our Patreon rewards is I recently built an arcade cabinet in my basement. I've started to become crazy about arcade stuff, and so we're going to be streaming a whole bunch of arcade games. Jeff's going to come over. If we can get any other friends over, we'll have some 4-player games going. People can request games because I've got several thousand games on that thing. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm trying to get a bunch of last minute stuff done before then, but.
Nice. You guys really need to talk to Ben. He refurbishes
pinball. Okay. Yeah.
Pinball machines, and he made a little arcade with Raspberry Pi to.
Oh, that's awesome!
That,
I was gonna use a Raspberry Pi at first, but I eventually went with just a PC. Yeah. So once again, thanks for coming on the show, and I guess you guys want to go ahead and get into it?
Sure. Let's get going.
Okay. I'll have a short little intro here. You guys want you both to imagine that. I don't know, it's a special occasion, you are on vacation or something, and you decide, let's get something permanent that will be with you forever, that will remind you of this wonderful vacation. So the two of you ask around about tattoo parlors in the area.
Okay.
And you're not familiar with the area, but you think you might have stumbled into a sort of a bad part of town because everyone seems to be directing you to this. There's this one tattoo parlor down that alleyway, and so you head down there, and it's all dark, and when you can hear Almost sounds like you can hear screams off in the distance. You're not quite sure where those are coming from. Every now and then there'll be like a gust of wind, and then like bats will fly by and brush against the top of your head. And you get around the corner, and there's like a warm light that reaches your eyes when you come around the corner, and you see this place that you've been directed to, and there's torches outside the door. And you think, well, this is unusual. But you look at the name up on top of the door, and you're like, okay, that makes a bit of sense. And you look inside, and the guy that's operating the little tattoo gun, he's about 30 feet tall. He's got red scales. He's got a big muscles, and then he's got wings. And he turns around. He's got little goggles on his.
Oh, it's Kat Von D.
Sure. The D stands for dragon.
Kat Von D. Yeah, the D stands for dragon.
So this tattoo artist turns around, and it says in this deep, fiery voice, "Come on in.
Yeah, that's definitely
You're next."
Yeah, that's definitely Kat Von D. She smokes a lot.
Okay. And then you notice that the name is fitting because you have just walked into the Dragon's Horde.
Ooh.
All right, so this Dragon's Horde is going to be a little bit different than we normally do. This one is going to be about just kind of the general idea of magical tattoos. So, Jeff, what would you say are magic tattoos?
I always think of magic tattoos as basically they're just like reusable like scrolls or something like that. Or
Okay.
they're kind of like a spell scroll in the form of a tattoo or something like that. I think there were like classes and prestige classes that had that sort of thing where like you would write you prepare your spells as tattoos, and they would have some added benefits or something.
Sure.
That's a fun idea. I kind of like that.
So yeah, I think magic tattoos are a neat idea. I've only encountered them in a game a couple times. But Jessica, did you have any examples of magical tattoos that you've encountered in a game?
Yeah, so I have a long-running game that I'm in right now, and our barbarian, he was coming up with the idea for it, and he'd just thrown in a tattoo as flavor. So he was coming from a very Nordic area, so he gave himself a little like Thor's hammer bicep tattoo, and our DM said, nah, it's not just a regular tattoo. And he made it so every time he leveled up, the barbarian would notice the tattoo was slowly moving down his bicep, down his elbow, down his forearm, and he got to about level 10, and it was in the palm of his hand was this Thor's hammer.
Interesting.
And then it burst forth from his hand, and he got a real live hammer from this tattoo, which was a pretty sweet hammer.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that because it's a good way to introduce and to basically give that character a piece of treasure or something. And
Yeah.
It wasn't like it wasn't just immediate. It was sort of like a it progressed down the arm and everything. I like that.
And it gave him a cool story to try and figure out where did this come from, why did I have it on me? Because he started building that into his story background of why he would have had this magical, where it would have come from. It was pretty interesting. Yeah.
There was, I don't think it was quite a tattoo, but when we were playing there was a campaign that I played in a long time ago. I think I've talked about my character Saythorn before. Him and his cohort, they both have very similar names. I've talked about that before. But one of the guys in the group, our friend Jay, was in the group, and he was playing a dwarf who part of his life quest was there was this magical hammer or set of hammers that were stolen from his hometown or something like that, and he was on a quest to retrieve them. I want to say he either had a tattoo or a scar of a hammer on his forehead, and then there was a point in the campaign where we had finished this really difficult adventure, and he woke up one day with whatever the symbol of the tattoo on his forehead was now had been replaced with a solid piece of metal embedded in his skin in the shape of a hammer. And he couldn't take it out and make it into an actual hammer or anything, but it gave him some permanent buffs to his character that were sort of supposed to aid him along in his quest. I want to say that's probably the closest that I've ever really seen a tattoo dealt with. There was also a game I think where I was playing with our friend Chris.
Dang.
Who he was playing a character that had magical tattoos, and he used them like what Jeff was saying, where it was just a usable or reusable magic item. I think in one case it was a tattoo of a scorpion that came to life, crawled up his arm, and then went down his throat, and he gained back hit points. Like it was a healing spell or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also the dragon marks from Eberron.
There are, yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Which I think had several like spells and stuff that came with it, I want to say.
Yeah, there were different levels of them. They weren't necessarily tattoos, they were birthmarks,
right.
But they looked like tattoos. And then there were like different levels of them. There was a feat you would take at low levels that would give you some sort of low level spell you could cast once or twice per day or something, and then you'd later on take a higher level feat that would upgrade it to a more powerful spell, and then a very high level feat that would upgrade it to a third higher level spell.
Yeah, it's funny you did that little intro with trying to remember, celebrate a memory together.
Yeah.
My one D&D group is all online.
Mm-hmm.
So we met up at one point in Kentucky and we were hanging out together, and we had planned to go get tattoos. Mm-hmm. And my DM was not there, but I had this idea for a tattoo, and I like messaged him. I was like, hey, so what if my character got this tattoo that's like thieves' tools, where like she could like take off the thieves' tools and like use them? Like what would I need for you to like let me get this? And he's like, you'd have to get it in real life. And I'm like, funny story. Guess where I am.
Had you already gotten it, or were you about to get it?
I was literally about to get it.
Okay.
At the tattoo parlor.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I would be so excited if a player in a game that I was in or that I was running, I would be so excited if another player was like so excited about the campaign that they were willing to get a tattoo to commemorate it. Like that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to do a little bit of research on this to try and see if there was like just some online examples of, here's some cool magic tattoos. And I found a lot of them. And like, there weren't really any like individual ones. Everything that I found was like, here's like 20. And so what I did find, I found there was a little thing somebody posted on Reddit that is a guide to magical tattoos. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's got like a whole bunch of rules about magic tattoos, which I think were kind of interesting. So it has rules on like how to be proficient in tattooist tools, how many magic tattoos you can fit on each part of your body, how long each one takes, the risk of disease, and that sort of thing. But then it also has little like non-mechanical rules on if you're using elemental ink or mood ink that changes color with your mood, and shifting ink and so on. So it's just got a bunch of really neat stuff to put in your game if you're interested in doing magic tattoos, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of like how they actually work. So I'll be putting that in the show notes, and yeah, I just think it's really cool. But also those examples, Jessica, that you had were really cool as well.
I thought of one other. It's not necessarily D&D related. I don't know if you read Brandon Sanderson books.
I know of them, but I've never read them myself.
The one series he has, there's a character that's like his species. He can like write on himself essentially just by thinking it. Yeah. So he'll write. He's a scientist, and he'll mark all his notes on his body somewhere. So he's got to try and later find the note that he wrote down. Like, is it behind my knee? Is it like?
There you go.
It's like, shoot, I put it on my back. Oh crap! I'll never see that.
So anything else you guys want to say about magical tattoos?
I don't have any tattoos.
I also do not have any tattoos. I hope that my father-in-law does not listen to this. I don't know why he ever would, but my wife has several tattoos that everyone but her father knows about. Exactly.
Oh no. Oh, that makes me think of my sister got a belly button tattoo, or not a tattoo, a piercing.
Belly button tattoo?
Yeah.
What would that be?
No, she got a belly button piercing or something like that. And like, I remember it was like on this really like long family trip that my dad found out about it. And
yeah.
It was very awkward.
I can imagine. Yeah, my wife's tattoos are, in my opinion, hideous, but she loves them.
They're
whatever.
No.
She can do whatever she wants. She knows I hate them. Yeah. She knew I hated them before she got the first one.
Right.
But
she's that kind of lady though.
She's that kind of lady. She found this like hideous clip art of this rat or something, and I love rats, but this drawing is hideous.
It's
no.
It's like It's like Raticate from Pokemon, but like
Except real ugly.
except for even uglier. Like, but I don't know. It's great though. I don't know.
She got one of those on one thigh. She found another similar from the same person, like another artwork of the same rat. She got on the other thigh, and then she gave them each Christmas presents one year. So one of them has a Furby sitting next to it. The other one has a Tamagotchi sitting next to it.
She gave them Christmas presents. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
She then got a Loch Ness Monster tramp stamp on her back. And then she went to, because she's gone on several trips across the world, and for each of these she gets a tattoo to commemorate it. The first one was England, second one was India. The tramp stamp was just whatever. But then she went to China, and then afterwards, when she got back, she got these two like Chinese lions on the backs of her thighs. And those actually look kind of cool. But everything else, they just look so bad.
Yeah. So yeah, a great way to describe your wife is she got her tattoos Christmas presents, which were smaller tattoos.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's so great.
Anyway, so I think that'll do it for tattoos, magical tattoos, for this Dragon's Horde. So if anybody wanted to submit Dragon's Horde items for us, or if they had questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre, Jeff, how would they get those to us?
They can send us an email at InterPartyConflict@gmail.com.
Yes. And now, Jessica, do you want to tell our listeners how they can find your podcast, how they can find you, anything else you're working on, anything like that?
Yeah. So you can find our podcast. It's incominggamecast.com, or you can visit us on Twitter, which is at incominggamepod.com. Cast was one letter too long. And you can also find me. I'm at Stirvino Lady on various social medias. So that's STIRVINO Lady. I do art. I've been a little bit not on social media lately, but I have all my old stuff on there. I have a cool D&D shirt that I sell on Threadless, which is also at Stirvino Lady, which a fun rogue themed D&D shirt if you want to check it out. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. So now, before we go any further, we have a giveaway to give away today.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Today, we're giving away a copy of Chapel on the Cliffs, created by content creator Goblinstone. So, Jeff, who is our winner today?
Today's winner is Renee R.
Winner. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yes, congratulations, Renee R. You should be getting that your copy of that in your email pretty soon. Give it a couple days, and then if you haven't gotten it, let us know, and we will get that taken care of. So if somebody wanted to enter this drawing to win this wonderful 5th edition adventure, how would they enter? How would they do that, Jeff?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Chapel on the Cliffs in the subject line.
Yes. And then just a couple quick things. Be sure to check out our Patreon if you like our show and you want to support it and help make the show better. Patreon.com/interpartyconflict. And Jessica, if I'm not mistaken, you guys also have a Patreon, correct?
We do. Patreon.com/incominggame.
Okay, there you go. And then we have a couple other podcasts I think you guys should check out. Crit Academy at critacademy.com. Justin, Ian, and Brandon, they are coming up with new and reusable content for new and old players alike, players and DMs. So check them out. And I keep mentioning Brandon. Brandon hasn't been on the show for a while. They've had Camden, who is their editor, has been replacing him. However, I believe Brandon should be coming back within the next few weeks.
Cool.
So check them out. Also, D&D Character Lab is a great podcast. They make characters and then pit them against each other and debate whose character is better. So great podcast. D&D Character Lab. Go check them out. You guys want to go ahead and get into the questions?
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, our first question comes from Electric Ocelots on Reddit, and they ask, what was your best result from a natural 20?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't really have a great response for this one. We've had this on our list for a while, and I think it's a great question, but every time I try to think about like, oh yeah, what was a cool natural 20? I got nothing. I'm sure there have been plenty of great natural 20s, but I don't know. I guess I just don't commit them to memory or
like
or what?
I feel like I remember more ones than I do 20s.
Yeah. How about you, Jessica? Do you have any examples you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I like this question a lot because I have one very in particular.
Sure.
It's kind of a long backstory. But the one character I had this ghost that would follow her around everywhere, and she's the only person that could see it or talk to it. Or and it was a very contentious relationship, and then they became friends. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
But eventually, this ghost got taken away from her somehow, and she was trying to find him, and she found his spirit kind of thrust into this golem that was trying to attack them all.
Okay.
So they're trying to fight this golem, and she's trying to figure out how she can get the spirit out of the golem, and the golem just wipes out everyone else in the party, and it's just me and him, and he's not like responding or talking or anything. And I give this huge and like impassioned speech of just like, come on, you don't want to do this. And then she's like, all right, roll to see if he's persuaded.
Yeah.
And it was roll 20, which if you play on roll 20, it gives you 2 rolls automatically in case you have advantage or disadvantage. And both rolls were a 20.
Whoa.
And
Okay.
my DM was like, all right, I guess I got it. The dice gods have said.
Yeah. So you had a ghost that was following you around?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Was it like
From-
a otherworldly patron sort of thing for warlocks, or?
No. So part of it, I still don't actually know why. Like my character can see ghosts, but my character can occasionally see ghosts.
Yeah.
And this one was kind of soul bound to her in the very opening sessions, and ended up following her along the whole
There you
time.
go.
He was a rich prick, and I was like the street rat kind of guy. And yeah.
This is a bit of a tangent, but have you ever listened to the Adventure Zone?
I did. I loved it.
Okay. Well, one of the more recent, they did like a few little side arcs for a little while of like different game systems, and in one of the game systems of that, one of the characters was playing a ghost.
Yes.
And I thought like that's such a cool concept. I would love to play a game where you can be a ghost.
Yeah.
So one natural 20 thing that does come to mind, it was not me. However, it was a guy in a group that I was in. I was playing, it was a 3rd edition game. This was even before 3.5. I was in a 3rd edition game, and we had just made characters. It was our first session. One of the guys in the group was playing a half-orc barbarian wielding a great axe. And we're in combat. He goes up to it. He's raging, by the way, in case that was not assumed. We're in combat. He goes up to attack this guy, rolls a natural 20, rolls again to confirm, because you did that in 3rd edition.
Right.
And so we got a natural 20 on this guy with a great axe, which at the time was a ×3 critical. So you would do 3 times damage. I think he was power attacking at the time. Let's just assume he was for the sake of the story. So he rolls triple damage, and that's a d12. So 3d12 plus probably, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8 times 3. So like he did a crap ton of damage, probably 60 or 70 damage in this attack. Mm-hmm. And he of course did enough damage to kill. It was a first level encounter. It was just a normal dude. I'm sure he did enough damage to kill him, but he did more than 50 points of damage. And in 3rd edition, anytime you took 50 or more points of damage, you would have to make what was called a massive damage save, or a death for massive damage save. So you would roll a save. It was a very low DC, but the idea was anytime you took a hit that was big enough, there was a chance you would just drop dead. Now this guy was already going to drop dead.
Sure.
But just for the heck of it, the DM decided, I'm going to roll and see if he's going to make the save. The DM rolled a natural 1.
Oh.
So the DM ruled that this half-orc, he walks up, he swings his axe at this guy, and the guy exploded. Just a normal human exploded just out of the sheer failure to exist that attack caused. So that's the best example I can think of a natural 20, and it wasn't even me.
Yeah. I can't think. I really can't think of too many specific. Like, I know of plenty of times where like a natural 20 comes up and it's like, oh, awesome, great, extra damage. Like as in 5th edition, like there's not the ×4 criticals,
right?
If you're wielding a scythe or whatever. I mean, like criticals can get pretty crazy in 5th edition because it doubles the dice that you roll.
Correct.
So if you're rolling a bunch of extra dice with like sneak attack and stuff like that.
Sneak attack, smite, stuff like that.
Yeah, sneak attack. So if there's some way to smite and sneak attack.
Well, you can do it.
I think that's Yeah, it is because you're not spending a bonus action to sneak attack.
Yeah, no, it's just whenever you have advantage. On
So
your
yeah,
attack.
if you're like smiting and sneak attacking and using a weapon and that has like bonus hit like damage dice or something, you can do a lot of damage. But in like lower levels, it's mostly just like, oh sweet, more damage. Like nothing crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like there were a few times in like maybe the Age of Worms campaign where there was one time I think that Meg killed a dragon with like a critical hit.
That does sound familiar.
Although I think we were playing. I think we had a house rule where it was like I think you had to get like triple 20s to kill something instantly.
Well, I think there was a official like a house rule in the 3rd edition DMG or something like that. That was if you roll a 20 and then you roll a 20 on the confirmation roll, you have a third chance to roll a third 20. Only a 20 is going to do anything. Nothing else will make anything happen. But if you roll basically 3 20s in a roll, you'll kill whatever you're attacking instantly. Mm-hmm. But it was explicitly a house rule. Not many people used it. And I don't know. We may have been using it in that campaign.
Yeah. I feel like there was a moment where she rolled
some combination of 20s that killed some. I think I do remember that.
Yeah, there was like she rolled 2 or 3 20s, and in any case, whatever she did, it ended up killing the dragon or something like that.
It might have actually only been 2 20s because I remember at the time I was playing with Chris or shortly before that, and in their campaign, you didn't have to confirm criticals, so it was 2 20s would be an instant kill, which I've talked about in the past why I think critical hits and critical fumbles are actually bad. So looking back, I don't know why I ever thought this was cool.
Sure.
But in theory, it was possible for the players to get killed 1 out of every 40 attacks, or 1 out of every 400 attacks. It never happened to anybody in our campaign. But,
right.
So I might have been carrying over that same rule into the Age of Worms campaign.
Gotcha. I
wish I remembered because that I'm very, very vaguely remembering that. Speaking of Chris, another thing involving natural 20s, he played, when I was playing as my character Ichi, he had a character that his whole shtick was he was a fighter sorcerer, but he had a bunch of chains hanging down from his armor, and he would cast a spell. I don't remember where the spell came from, but he would cast a spell so that each of the chains would become 15 feet long and would attack as if he was wielding them. Somehow that was balanced, and then also he had them made in such a way that each one had like a 12 to 20 times 3 critical. And basically he would get 10 attacks per round with these freaking chains. We were high level. It was a very high powered campaign. But I'm going to do my impression right now of what it was like every time his turn came around. So let me grab 5 D20s from my dice bag. This one's a D12, but it doesn't matter. So this is my impression of him. So if you can get some of this, if the mics pick up this audio, listen to this. Okay, it's Chris's turn. All right, I'm going to attack. Okay, hit, crit, hit. Pick up all the 5 dice again. Roll them again. Hit, crit. Ooh. Not a critical fumble. And that was every turn. Every turn he would have multiple critical hits. At least there would be at least one critical fumble in there every now and then. But it was just every freaking round he got critical hits so often, and he got so many attacks. He would literally pull out a calculator and then punch in a bunch of numbers. Okay, 430 damage. Jeez. But so lots of crits from him. None individually were very noteworthy, but just their sheer number.
Yeah, sure.
was noteworthy in and of itself.
I do have one other story, but it's not mine, and I don't know.
I didn't share any of mine, so go for it.
This one is not for children. I don't know how
go ahead. If I need to bleep something out, I will. If
Okay.
I need to, if it is the subject matter, I can tag the episode explicit and see what happens.
I can go with the subject matter to read the bleep, but
Okay.
we're fighting a Cyclops, and our barbarian called a shot. He's like, I'm gonna cut off his penis.
Okay.
And the DM's just like, all right, you're gonna call a shot. You gotta like I'm not just gonna let you say that and it's gonna happen.
Right.
But then he rolled this attack roll and he got a nat 20. He's like, all right, you did it. Cut off his penis. It's gone.
There you go.
Congrats. Mazel tov.
And our barbarian was up until that point known for carrying around pieces of people that he killed.
Oh my.
Oh,
He
great.
did have to draw the line at that.
Okay. Oh goodness.
But it's like, I can imagine the scene where he like looks down at it on the ground and he thinks about it for a second. It's like, I could put that on a necklace. Nah, never mind.
Pretty much. He was really trying to think of how he could manage it. And we're all just like, no.
Just
Just
leave it where it
no.
lies.
Yeah. So you guys got anything else about natural 20s?
No, not a specific story. I just really I like it when they're story based. Like, it's fun to have the natural 20, like,
Sure.
Hit wise. Those are always great.
Yeah,
But, to get that somehow, like, you can get emotional resonance in there. I'm all about that.
Like I've had plenty of times where a high roll resulted in something really interesting happening, but none that stand out as like, yeah, man, is because I got a natural 20.
Right.
So I wish I had a better. I've been staring at every week. I look at the list of questions and I'm like, should we do that one? But I just can't. I can never think of any good examples. So it's probably not going to happen. So I'm glad that we have a guest on that does have something to contribute to this question.
Yeah, get some an extra person to kind of fill it in.
Yeah. Because it's a great question. I wish I had a good answer for it.
All right, our next question comes from Lost Ranger 17 on Reddit, and they ask, how can I balance a game session when half of my players want to smash and kill things and the other half want to explore and roleplay?
Yeah. Jessica, do you have anything off the bat?
My biggest suggestion is going to be to talk to them. I mean, that's the number one thing when you're DMing and you have players in general.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter like what their personalities are. Like, see what they're interested in, what they're okay with, and to, like, is it okay if we have half fighting and half role play? Like, if not, are we going to have to do two different groups, or like,
Sure.
just assuming that you're playing with adults.
Sure.
Yeah.
Trying to like figure out what works.
That's a
for
risky
everyone.
assumption, I think.
Yeah, it is a risky assumption.
Yeah.
But
in a perfect world, I think you wouldn't have to worry about this because in theory, every game session would include some combat, some exploration, some role playing. But I think that there's a lot of things that make that not the case. First off, exploration and role play are harder to set up for the DM than combat. So I think it is very common for players to get used to just smashing and killing things. And also I think that if you are playing, like, let's say you are a DM who wants to incorporate everything and you start playing and then you notice, oh, nobody's really engaging in the role play. You're probably going to use less of it and less of it as the game goes on.
Yeah.
So it can be hard to really incorporate everything into a game. And I guess to an extent, it is actually kind of easier if you do get a group that's all about combat. Well, that's less stuff that you have to do as the DM. Like I said, it's easier. So a lot of DMs might kind of lean that way unintentionally, but then kind of get into a rut, I guess. But like you were saying, Jessica, just talk to the players, but also I would say just try to incorporate everything, especially if you know that some players want this and some players want that. You don't ever want to alienate one of those groups and say, sorry, we're gonna have less of this than this other thing. So, I think just trying to incorporate each side as much as you can. Now that can be hard to do though, because let's say you start off a session with an encounter, and then that encounter takes up 3/4 of your game time.
Sure.
How are you going to, what are you going to do to incorporate more role playing? I guess you could make a note to next time try to have more role playing to counteract this time's combat.
Yeah.
But I feel like combat, it's hard to gauge how long it's going to take. You might think, oh, this encounter is going to be over in a second. And then someone rolls a natural 1, someone else rolls a natural 20. Next thing you know, it's after midnight and, you're still in the combat.
It's just somebody's trying to do some really crazy stuff during combat to spice things up, and it ends up complicating things, and then you're just like checking rule books for an hour.
Yeah, but then at the same time, sometimes you might set up an encounter. You're like, this is going to be the whole session. This is all I have planned for the day, and then it's over. Somebody trivializes the encounter in the first round, and you're like, oh crap. Okay, what do you guys want to do?
I didn't think of Fireball.
Yeah, exactly. Crap. So it's hard to balance.
Yeah.
plan as much as possible, I would say. Plan a lot of stuff you probably aren't going to need. I mean, you don't ever want to over-prepare. I think we'll maybe get to that a little bit more on our next question. But plan enough that you won't ever find yourself like, oh, shoot, well, I want to have more role-playing for the role-playing people, but I didn't prepare it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So role-playing especially, like, if you don't have that prepped, it's really hard. I mean,
yeah.
It's one thing to improvise like a specific conversation. It's another thing to improvise this cool backstory that would interweave everyone's feelings and emotions. And,
right. Yeah. Wait, like when you're improvising role playing, I feel like more during that than any other time you run the risk of doing like adversarial stuff.
Okay.
Just because when you're trying to come up with stuff on the fly, you're you only have so much time to like figure something out. So like if plan A doesn't work, then like, oh crap, I don't have a plan B. I'm improvising right now.
Yeah.
As far as like, preparing, I know like a lot of DMs will like ask their players like, okay, what's your character's background?
Yeah.
So they have stuff to work off of, but that's more on the role playing side. Mm-hmm. Ask your players about their characters, like about the mechanics of the character. Like, yeah. So if this player is playing it, like has put all of their stats into like deception and persuasion and stuff, like they're gonna be wanting to do more role playing stuff because they're gonna be able to use their abilities more. Whereas the guy who put all of his points in like strength and like attacking and stuff, they're itching for a fight one way or another. So like knowing what your players' characters are capable of and what your players want to do with their characters. Cause like speaking as a player, like I'm playing in 2 different campaigns right now and they're both like completely different characters. Mm-hmm. One I have built for combat. Like he's a meat shield.
Yeah.
And not much else. And like, I find myself most of the time when there's not combat, I'm just sort of like going along with everything. And I'm like, it's a character of my own design. It's a problem of my own design, so I can't really blame anybody for it. But like, I feel like I'm like, well, I'm just sort of sitting here and waiting for combat to start so I can get in the thick of it. Yeah. Other character is a bard with deception and like, the illusion spell or like, charming spells and things like that. Sure. So I'm like, okay, like, all right. Trying to find ways to be helpful in combat, but I'm mostly like trying to find ways to talk us out of combat.
Sure,
like,
sure.
The bad guy shows up and I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to convince them to just let us walk by, and in that case, it's a pre-written adventure and it's a pre-written adventure that's a book that we spent money on. And I was like trying to talk us through it.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to talk us through an encounter. And then there's nothing in the book that says like this is what happens if your characters try to talk through it.
Right.
I'm like, why wouldn't you that's a part of preparing is like have an option for your players to talk their way out of combat if they want to do that. Mm-hmm. Or have an option for if the fighter just wants to just get in and start fighting things, start punching things, like have that be possible, but like it might throw a wrench in things, but you can work around it.
Yeah. I think that as much as you would like to have half the session be this, half the session be that, I think probably the best thing, the best solution, best with a little trademark next to it, is to try and instead of having half be this, half be that, having all of it be both. And I guess let me try to explain what I mean by that. Don't just have an encounter where the only solution is combat.
Right.
Don't have a role-playing encounter where the fighter has nothing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or if they decide that they're bored and just want to hack something, don't have that like derail the entire campaign.
Sure.
What's the guy's name in the Whispering Cairn that got killed in your Roll20 thing?
The kid or the
the quest giver, Alistair?
Alistan?
Yeah, Alistan. Yeah, Alistan. It's like if somebody just wants to start hacking and killing somebody, don't have it be if it's the quest giver.
Yeah.
Or have a backup quest giver there for you just in case.
I guess. Yeah. We were doing this patron Roll20 game, and this was a few months ago, and we started this adventure, and then we didn't continue it for a while. We just played through some more of it just last week, and we started the thing, and there was supposed to be like a little bit of role playing to get the players to the dungeon they're going to be going through, and when they got to basically the quest giver's house to go find what they were looking for, instead of like waiting around or looking for him in town, he wasn't home. They just broke down his door, triggered a magical alarm. When he showed up with some guards, they just attacked the guards. And as the DM, I wanted to be like, guys, you came here looking for information, and now you're attacking the guy that has the information to give to you. But I didn't want to strong arm the players into following the adventure. I mean, I wanted to be like, okay, you did that, now this happens, and so on. Yeah, but it just kind of got worse and worse and worse. I ended up just kind of pushing them to the dungeon and then retconning what had happened. Sure. I'm not proud of that, but I mean, what else was I going to do?
Yeah. The two campaigns I'm in are like newer groups of players. Yeah. And there are a lot of times where something like that kind of happens. And like, I'm one of the players, and I could make the suggestion as a character, but I also don't want to strong arm new players into, like, I don't want to be like, no, you can't do that. Yeah. Like, stop having fun, guys.
Right,
like,
right.
You gotta follow. You gotta follow all the rules, not just the written ones, but the unwritten ones.
Right. Yeah. So if you can run an encounter where there is stuff to explore while the encounter is going on, and ways that will make the encounter easier, such as the players find out they can like trigger a trap, or like they can make a chandelier fall down on a bad guy or something.
Yeah. That
can help the players that are interested in exploring. If there is a way to talk themselves out of it, or even just a way to like not necessarily talk their way out of the encounter, but a way to make the encounter easier or just more interesting, such as in one of the first episodes of the Adventure Zone, one of the players is playing a cleric. He uses this thaumaturgy spell to make his voice really loud, and he shouts to Squad 1 and Squad 2, there's only 4 of them. You come from the left, we'll come from the right, or something. And, there were no other squads, but that player was then able to use a role-playing type ability in order to put the bad guys on edge. I think some of the bad guys ran off in search of these other squads or whatever. So make there be elements that all players can interact with, rather than just having an encounter where the only solution is to smash and kill things. If you are going to have something where there is only one solution, make sure that it is in small enough chunks that you can then get to something else. So like, don't have a big long encounter that's all combat. Maybe have like a really short encounter that is just combat, and then right after that have some exploration or have some role play or something. It is hard to balance, but if you can try and incorporate, if there's a role play encounter, try to make it so that the fighter can intimidate somebody, or the fighter can, I don't know, like bonk somebody over the head or something, so that in Firefly, you guys seen Firefly? I know you have, Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
In one of the earlier episodes, they take a job from this like crime boss guy. They find out that the job is to steal a bunch of medicine. They steal it, but then they regret it. So they give the medicine back. They get attacked by the bad guy's henchmen. The henchmen, they beat him up, they tie him up, they give the henchmen the money back, and they say, okay, we're giving you this money back because we didn't do our end of the deal. Take this money back to your boss. We won't deal with you. You won't deal with us. We'll just go our separate ways. And then the henchman says, you take that money and use it for your funeral because I will never stop following you. So Malcolm Reynolds, the captain, he says, well, okay, kicks the guy into the engine, kills him, says to the second henchman, you take this money, give it to your boss, we'll part ways. And the second guy's like, yep, no problem, you got it. And, that's not the only way to deal with a problem, but that's a way that you can take a role-playing encounter and allow the fighter to do something to help, the encounter. So try and find a way to make your encounters dynamic enough that everybody has something they can do. That way, it doesn't matter how much of it is combat, how much of it is role play, because in every instance, there will be something for everybody.
You brought up that Adventure Zone story, and it made me think, if you do end up going to combat that seems like it's taking forever, which has happened so many times, making sure that you asking them, like, how they're doing the combat, like, rather than just, I swing my axe, I rolled this, or I got 5 HP next. Ask them like, okay, well, what are you like? How are you swinging this axe? And like get them into it in a little bit more of a role play kind of way.
Sure.
Which might encourage the more role playing people that kind of want to get out of combat to maybe think, oh well, maybe I could climb up this wall and then do this flip over here, and like get them involved in a little bit more of that thing. If they're stuck in combat and we're not getting out anytime soon, just keep the role play going within that.
Sure.
I feel like this sort of thing is the perfect place to use the inspiration mechanic.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I haven't really played too much 5th edition like firsthand, but like I feel like not many people use the inspiration mechanic as much.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's always the case, but it like the three campaigns I've ever been in with 5th edition, there hasn't been too much of it.
Yeah.
But like if somebody wants to try something like crazy, like climb up this thing and do a flip, you say, okay, you do that at disadvantage, but whether it works or not, you say you have inspiration because that was a cool thing you tried to do.
Yeah.
So like whether you failed at that weird thing that you weren't proficient in or whatever, and so you got disadvantage, it's like, okay, but let's say, okay, the next time you want to do something crazy, you have inspiration so you can kind of cancel out that disadvantage.
Oh yeah.
Or you can go and do something that you're good at and have advantage. Mm-hmm. So like it's sort more of like an encouragement to try crazy things for the fighter to try a more like wild attack, or to have like the role player do something more less orthodox, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely say that whenever combat eventually devolves into I got a 18, I do 6 damage. He got a 12, that's a miss. I got a 13, that's a miss. Whenever that happens, like that's when combat is at its absolute worst. So yeah, if you can involve more of what the characters are doing, even if it is just combat, that can let the players who are not as good at combat or not as excited about combat, it lets those players at least have some sort of an outlet. With my character Ichi, he was a dumb barbarian at first, and the other players were like all spellcasters, or like several of the other characters were spellcasters. And I often felt like there was nothing that I could really do to roleplay. Like I wasn't really very good at it. Whereas everybody else, they were like, oh, I'm going to cast this spell and it's going to do this cool thing. So I eventually gave my character, I bought an item that let him cast prestidigitation at will. And then I used that as sort of a jumping off point for roleplaying. So if you aren't good at roleplaying, you can kind of use some of the mechanics to roleplay a bit. And similarly, if you're not good at combat, I guess you could try to use some of your role playing to give you an edge in combat, I guess. I don't know. This is definitely something that is hard to balance for players and DMs alike.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
This is something everyone has to deal with at some point.
Yeah.
So
our next question comes from Mickey through email, and they ask, what are your biggest do's and don'ts for a new DM?
Yeah. So Jeff, you got anything?
Absolutely not. Well, I mean, I guess I do have some, like from the perspective of a player. I guess I do. But why don't you start? Because I see you got a list there.
I do have a list. I won't just rattle them all off. But I've got a bunch of specific things, and then whenever we're winding down on the discussion, I do have just a very general do and don't.
Sure.
First one, I would say prepare.
Yeah.
Some of these are going to be here's a do and then a corresponding don't. Do prepare. Don't over prepare. And let me explain what I mean by that. I can definitely say that the best sessions I've ever had of DMing were the sessions where I prepared a lot. And that doesn't mean you don't want to have a rigid script that the players have to follow. You have to let the players deviate. So I don't mean prepare so much that you have no flexibility. Prepare what you want to happen. Prepare a few alternatives in case the players do something else. And then no matter what, you're going to have to improvise some stuff, but the more you do have to pull from, let's say you put in a hallway that splits into, it's a T intersection. So there's 3 directions the players can go. You don't have to have all 3 planned out, but if you plan 2 and if you plan forward and right and the players go left, well, you could just have whatever you plan to the right be to the left. I mean, you could. Just as long as you have something to pull from so that you're not 100% having to make everything up as you go. The more you do have prepared, or let's say you thought you prepared all 3 directions, but you missed one of them. Well, I don't have one planned for that, but hey, I have this other little sidetrack from later on. I'll have that be there instead. You have something to pull from so that you don't, the worst thing is when like you didn't prepare for something and then you're like, it doesn't work. You fail.
It's locked and the key's broken and your
Exactly.
your lockpick breaks.
Oh, you attack it? It's made of adamantine. What? You want to steal the door and sell it because it's adamantine and it's super, super expensive? It's magic adamantine. It disappears the moment you take it out of the dungeon or something. Like, you want to have a lot prepared, especially when role-playing, because role-playing stuff might go by in 5 seconds because... you never know exactly how players are going to role play. They might not be as into it as you expected. So I would just recommend preparing just like a little grab bag of interesting role playing encounters. Here's an NPC they come across. Here's like they hear a voice and they want to follow that voice. What happens when they follow that voice? Here's like a cool magic item that they could encounter and then what its backstory is in case they want to look into it. A little grab bag of stuff. You want to always have something in case you just need an idea. Even if it's just like a sentence that gives you something that your mind can go off of to come up with a cool story behind it. Something that will get you going. You should always have a ton of those just set aside. But again, you don't want to have so much prepared that everything is scripted. You do want to be flexible. So that's the first thing I would recommend. Do prepare, don't over prepare.
Yeah.
You guys got anything else?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got plenty more, but when do you guys wanna go?
Yeah. Anything you got, Jessica?
Yeah. So I think when I first started DMing, my first big don't be a player.
Oh my goodness,
that's a good one.
Yes.
It's really hard when you
man.
first start DMing to like turn off that player brain and be like, well, in this situation, I would do this.
Mhm.
And like, you just gotta, you're not playing the game, you're DMing the game. You
Sure.
gotta step back and you gotta let them play the game how they want to play it. And you gotta turn off that like little bit of you that wants to do like, no, why are you, don't do, why are you, don't,
Yeah. And a lot of people that use DMPCs, we've talked about DMPCs in the past.
Yeah.
I think that they are terrible. At best, they are unnecessary. At worst, they're an active detriment to the game. But the reason they are an active detriment to the game is that most of the time, DMs have a DMPC because they also want to be a player.
Yep.
If you would rather be a player than a DM, you probably shouldn't be DMing. I mean, like, maybe your group doesn't have a DM, but if you are also trying to be a player, it is going to be bad. It is not going to go well. Mm-hmm. So yes, be a DM, not a player, is a great piece of advice. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Good job.
That is a good one.
Another one that I would say is, this is just a standalone thing. You do use character voices. And we talked
Yes.
about character voices a few weeks ago. Even if you think they sound stupid, just try it, commit to it, just have some fun with it. Nobody is going to make fun of you at your game. I mean, I hope nobody at your, in your own game is going to make fun of you.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be embarrassed doing it, but once you get going, you're going to realize, oh, I mean, this is just part of the game. Nobody's going to think anything of it unless you draw attention to how embarrassed you are doing it.
Sure.
So, and the more character voices you do, like, you might get better at it, and you might realize, like, oh, wow, the players are really attached to this character because of the voice that I did.
Sure.
So try out character voices and do those whenever you can.
Yeah, there's a he's kind of like a squire kind of character. He's just like a messenger that Dave uses.
Okay.
Like he'll show up randomly like, "Oh, hello, sirs." Like he's very unassuming and like clumsy, and we're always like, "Aw," like, I can't even remember the kid's name. I think it's like Frank or something. It's
Okay.
like, oh, poor Frank, and like we're always like giving him like a tip or something like
Yeah.
that every time he comes around. Like, thanks, Frank. Like, don't get killed out there, please.
There's a character in the Adventure Zone that is he is Angus MacDonald, boy
Angus.
detective,
Oh no.
and he has a fairly
Hello,
recognizable
sirs.
character voice, but then also he says hello, sirs, whenever he
Okay.
he encounters the main characters, and like he comes back several times throughout the story, throughout the whole campaign, and it is as simple as saying, "Hello, sirs," and immediately everybody knows exactly who the character is.
Sure.
There's even a point, one of the live episodes, the characters they wake up in college or high school or something, and their characters they just wake up and they're like in high school, I guess. And then in walks, "Hello, sirs," and they realize that they are in like a
Everyone
dorm or
knew.
something with like teenage Angus MacDonald.
Sure.
And
that must be where Dave got the inspiration for the voice.
Very well, maybe.
But it is like that is sort of that's a great way to like, just like now we're all just like, we're looking out for this character that like, it's mostly like, Dave's way of like getting us information. It's like, oh, this character shows up and gives you a little exposition or something. It's like, okay, bye, see you later, Frank. Love you.
Probably, if I could group this into a bigger category, it is use NPCs and make NPCs interesting. NPCs will probably only be around for a very short period of time. You want to make an impression when they're there. If they make an impression, the players will remember them. They'll want them to come back. And then if you have like a core group of, 3 or 4 NPCs that keep coming up, that is so much more interesting than 100 nameless, faceless NPCs that nobody could care about. One thing that I would say definitely don't do is fudge dice. I know that you're the DM. I know that you can do whatever you want. It is well within your rights to fudge. So this is me asking you, as one DM to another, please don't fudge. Because if you start to do it, especially at first, you're gonna do it more and more, and eventually it's gonna run away from you. Eventually the game will be more fudge than actual roll. And at that point, why are you even rolling? I say this from experience. Try to start off never fudging. Just let the dice fall where they may. Make the best of whatever happens.
Yeah.
I think that will end up with a better game, and you won't feel guilty when something bad happens,
Right.
because that's what I would always do.
And I mean, like, worst case scenario, one of the players realizes you're fudging the rolls.
Oh, and that is the worst.
Yeah, like they're gonna resent you, and like they're gonna feel like they can fudge the rolls, or they're gonna feel like, why does this even matter? Like, sort of like they're gonna feel cheated in a way. So like as a player, like, I have to roll a die. Like I took this time to build a character based on these rules. I am going to try to make this character the best fighter it can possibly be, but I still have to roll that die. I still have to roll that die and possibly roll a 1 or a 2.
Sure.
So, like when I get to that moment and I'm like, well, that sucks, but that's just how the game works. You get really frustrated, and then the DM turns around and fudges a dice roll. It's like, well, if I have to follow these rules, I feel like so should you. As a DM, you should follow the rules, or at the very least stay consistent in the rules that you follow. Yeah.
And I mean, there is an argument to be made to the opposite, but so I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying please don't. So it's your game, but again, try, especially at first, try just not doing it. The moment when I started playing with Chris, I started playing with like Melissa and John and that group, it was so shocking that all of the DM's roles were just out in the open. And I was like, oh my goodness, you can play like that? Because I used the DM screen and I would fudge all sorts of stuff. And then I started doing what they do. I still do it to this day because I love just the dice are the dice. Yeah. They're the ones that determine what happens. We're all finding out what's going to happen as this game goes on. I think that's so much better in my opinion.
For sure.
I have this one's a little bit more, I don't know, it's less basic, but I would say do remember all 5 senses.
Oh yeah.
I got a little like advice once to put a sticky note on my DM screen that said listed all the 5 senses.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you're sitting there and you're describing something, it's so easy to say like, oh, it's rainy out, and to remember to talk about like the smell of rain, or like you can, how you can smell the mold in the air or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or when you touch it, it kind of, it feels grainy, or it kind of, your hand goes through it like pudding, or, use the things that would evoke a reaction in people. Yeah. And build off of that to kind of put them in the scene.
Have a dictionary and a thesaurus on hand too.
Yes.
Sure. for some extra special descriptions and stuff.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good idea. Yeah. Like keep a list of the senses on hand. and like maybe even like throw in like an extra like mental psychic sense or something like that.
A sixth sense,
right? You know, just because it's it's D&D, you never know.
Yeah.
And that also makes me think of this has to do with more of like preparation and like knowing the places that your players are going to be going into.
Yeah.
So like a city, gosh, I feel really bad because like I got this from a YouTuber. I can't remember her name, but she talked about creating a city for her campaigns, and it was like a process called sperm.
Jeff?
So you just so it's kind of like the five senses of a city, but or in a way it's so you're like the sociology, the political aspects, I could try to remember how to spell sperm, the economics, the religious, and the like the military aspects of it. So like having that list of so like
good mnemonic device there.
yeah, it like I thought it was great. I was like, that's amazing. Like yeah, those are like 5 good points that you can bring up. So like when your players walk into a town, like have ways to kind of bring each one of those those aspects up.
Yeah.
So when a player walks into a room, what is it? What do they see? What do they hear? What do they smell?
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty. I don't like the acronym, but that's a good idea. I would definitely say that not using the 5 senses, or even the one that Jeff mentioned that I don't want to say, I would say that
Merp.
that is probably
call it MERP.
MERPs.
MERPs.
Yes, the 5 senses and MERPs. I would definitely say that I am lacking in that regard when I run a game. MERPs. So yeah, I think that's pretty good, and I'll try to involve MERPs when I'm creating a town or something. We could go back and edit into previous episodes where we talked about city building and
sure.
Anyway, So one thing I would say is don't stress over rules. It's good to know the rules. As the DM, in theory, you should know the rules better than everybody else, but you don't have to. There's always going to be somebody else that, is a rules lawyer or whatever. In general, just know the rules well enough to set up a situation. And if there comes a time where somebody wants to do something you don't know how to adjudicate, make a ruling right then and there. Doesn't have to be great. It just has to keep the game moving. Mm-hmm. Keep the game moving. If there is a better way to do it, find it out. Do it from that point afterwards. But for the current session, make a ruling and keep going.
As a rules lawyer, I somewhat disagree, but I understand the need to keep things moving.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next is keep the game moving.
Keep the game moving.
Go on.
That is I think that is more important than knowing all the rules. I will definitely agree with that. To keep the game moving, because you don't want to spend the time that you have with your group looking through rule books.
Sure.
On the other hand, because I spend so much time creating a character for specific things, mm-hmm. like when that thing comes up, if that thing comes up for somebody else, and then the DM makes a on the spot ruling for it, I go like, wait a minute, that's not how that works, because I was going to do that later.
Okay.
I built my character around the fact that the fact of this one rule.
Yeah.
Like the mechanic I wanted to use is in that rule. Don't ignore that rule, please.
Okay. So, I could understand that.
So that's the only time not the only time, but that's one of the big things of make sure you know the rules to the best of your ability, but if there is something that is going to slow the game down completely, mm-hmm. at the very least, keep it moving and then go back to it later.
Sure.
like revise something or just say okay, from now on we'll do it this way or something like that. But
okay. And one general thing that I would say do talk to your players. If there is a time mm-hmm. where you did make a ruling that does kind of screw over a player, talk to them and say, hey, what's the best way that we can resolve this? If it might mean going back on a ruling you made previously. Now, players try to save this until the end of the session if you can.
Right.
But if it is something that you kind of built your character around, just try to make it quick. Try to find a way to do it in the quickest way possible, and don't be afraid to tell your DM what you want. And DMs, don't be afraid to ask your players what they want.
I go for the passive aggressive approach.
Okay.
Don't do that.
Sure.
But that's That's sadly my like go-to thing. It's just like I think I get that from my parents.
Yeah.
It's just passive aggression.
I'll go through. I have a few more sort of simpler ones here. Do keep notes, but don't be afraid to improvise. So like keep notes of what has happened. Also keep notes of what you want to happen, but don't, like I said earlier, don't be afraid to improvise when the players do something that you weren't expecting. So you do want to make sure that you know what has happened previously so that you can build on it. You don't want everything to be completely new, but if you don't know a particular detail, just come up with whatever detail makes sense at the time.
But take notes on those like when you improvise,
Yes.
take notes on what you improvise so that
Yes.
you can stay consistent.
Yeah.
One of the best sessions I ever DM'd was almost completely improv. I knew the town they were going to, but I let them stop midway to gather supplies and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of our kind of a rogue cleric kind of guy,
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, well, maybe we could do a con while we're here. And I'm like, okay. And so I made up this whole gentry and this big party, and then they infiltrated the party and they ended up burning down the house while stealing the stuff. They like were walking away like it was Ocean's 11, but there was like the town was in flames behind them. It was like the entire thing I had to make up on the spot, but it was fantastic. It's still like a huge, this is like the thing they remember the most from the whole campaign.
That's really cool.
They're walking away from a burning city and Claire de Lune is playing in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be really fulfilling when like something you improvise ends up being the thing everybody keeps talking about.
Yeah, it really is. It's fun to look back on that moment because I had no plans for that town at all. I was like, you can buy some swords. Do you want to buy some swords?
Right.
You had no plans, but they had plans.
Yeah.
It's like, that city's burning to the ground.
One do and don't I would recommend is do limit what books are legal and don't compromise on that. What I mean is this is for new DMs. When you're an experienced DM, feel free to allow the players to bring sources from whatever you want. But I very, very much recommend a new DM core books only. You don't have to stick by this, but unless you have read every single book that has come out or every single thing from the DM's Guild or anything like that, there's always going to be stuff that you are not familiar with that a player is more familiar with than you are. Mm-hmm. So if you don't, unless you are 100% on the ball for everything, there's going to be so much stuff that you have to incorporate that you aren't going to know how. Mm-hmm. I find that even when an experienced DM, if I'm playing with new players, I will often tell the players handbook only for character options. That's just because I know what those players are going to come up with, and I know how to best accommodate the stuff that the players come up with if it's player's handbook only. The more books you add in, just the more work it's going to be, the more elements that you're not familiar with, the more wild cards might show up.
Yeah. I feel like with that, it's important to know, don't be adversarial. We talked about this before, obviously, but like, there's sort of a thing when it comes to like taking stuff from other books, like a player, especially an experienced player, like trying to build like the best build or something like that. Yeah. Like I'm trying to min-max that character, so I'm using this feat from this book and this class from that book and so to kind of make the perfect fighter or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're gonna allow those things as a DM and you're not super familiar with all of those classes and everything, like talk to the player. Be like, look, I want you to have fun. I want you to have this cool character you want to make, but you got to let me know what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard for a player to see that, to hear that and be like, well, look, I'm not going to tell you that because then you'll build stuff to stop me.
Sure.
So like, don't, do your best to play along with your players, not against your players.
Yeah.
So that they will be more free in telling you like, oh, I want to get this feat and this feat because it makes me do this really cool thing that might be a little overpowered, but it's a lot of fun. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's a bit overpowered, but we'll work around that. I want you to have your cool thing. Let's work with that. So work with your players in building their characters down to like the one cool thing that they're like the one aspect that they're really focusing on. Like find out what that is.
Yeah.
So that, that lessens the chance of like wild cards and such.
Sure. Yeah. The advantage to knowing what options your players have isn't that you know how to counter them, is that you know how to make them all shine.
Yeah. There you go.
So yeah. And I say don't compromise on that, because there's always going to be the one player that's like, oh no, but I found this really cool thing in this book you've never heard of. I just want to make this cool thing. And the moment you let 1 inch through, the whole game is going to run away with you. Like the whole game is going to be destroyed because you have no clue how to deal with this thing that you don't know how to counter it. You don't know how to incorporate it. That player has now become the star of the group because of this thing that you are not familiar with. So, it's not always going to happen, but it's going to happen when you least want it to happen.
Ooh, I have one more do.
Go for it.
Let Jeff play Warforged.
Moving on. Jeff.
What?
I'm mad at you.
No.
Before my big general thing at the end, I have one more. Do read published material and listen to actual plays, which I think is good. Like, so it is good to read published adventures and listen to actual play podcasts and such. I think those are good because, especially if you're a new DM who hasn't had much experience as a player, you might not know what the game can do. And if you read an adventure that uses some sort of a trap or something or a monster really creatively, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I never even thought of that. And then now you not only will think to use that, but you'll think, what other things can I use in ways I never thought of? Mm-hmm. So it is good to get a broad experience of what the game can do. However, the don't that goes along with this is don't try to recreate Critical Role. Don't try to recreate the Adventure Zone. You want to make your own thing. What you make, I guarantee, is not going to be as fun to listen to as the show that you were listening to or whatever. That's fine. It's like watching a movie and being like, man, I want to make a movie. Your movie is not going to be as good as the movie you just watched. That's why you got to get practice. You're going to practice, and eventually you will make your own Critical Role. You will make your own Adventure Zone, and it'll be as fun or more for you and your group as those podcasts or whatever are to listen to. But don't have that be your goal. Have that maybe a very far off goal. Have that be just like your aspiration rather than your expectation, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Before I finish out, anything you guys got anything else for this? Any more do's or don'ts for a new DM?
Do have fun.
Well, yeah, there you go. My last one was do have fun. Don't worry. Like, don't worry about what's going to happen. You're going to have fun. You're going to, everybody's going to have a great time. Just go for it. Go out of your comfort zone. Have fun with the game.
Woo.
There you go. All right. That'll do it for our regular questions. So before we get to the funeral pyre, we're going to move over to our social media discussion questions. So our previous week's question that I posted to Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit was, your current character has access to the internet. What were the last 5 searches in their Google history? Now, I didn't really have any good responses to this. Did either of you have anything you wanted to say? If not, we'll go to what some listeners put.
Probably searching for daggers.
Okay.
And like really basic stuff like where to find gold, where to find pretty jewelry.
Some like pyramid scheme thing or something.
Sure.
I came up with the idea of there's like WebMD where you're like looking up diseases and stuff, and you get like you're just like you have like a cough and you start looking up cough and you're like, oh no, I have all these diseases.
Oh no, mummy rot.
Right? Yeah, so something like that. Yeah, like so it's like a hypochondriac character like looking up like it's like, oh, do I have a long-term madness? Like what is going on?
Or 5 signs that you might have a long-term madness.
Yeah. Or
number 4 will shock you.
Or a similar thing would be like WebDM.
Oh my goodness.
Where it's like characters like looking up how to get through like parts of a dungeon, and then it'll be a bunch of instead of a bunch of doctors, it's a bunch of DMs like telling them, like giving them advice on it, but it's like only advice like through their like experience of it. So like they ran it differently, so it's not gonna be like you want to take it with a grain of sand or whatever. But
yeah.
I need to see that acted out. I need like a comic or like a little like
that would
I need to
good,
see characters doing that right now.
So we got a few people on Facebook posted. I think we only got one or two on Twitter and Reddit. John G said, "How do I say drop your gear and get out in Orc?"
Right, translate.
Translate, exactly.
Obviously.
Google
Oh my
Translate.
goodness.
There you go.
Are dragons immune to psychic damage?
Right.
What is the collective noun for kobolds? Components for revivify spell. And what is the location of a Cerarax phylactery?
Right, yeah.
So-
Google search.
Yep, where's
Kinda like
the
a-
phylactery? That's a good one.
I'm not going to read all of these because we the last few episodes we've
Gone really-
they've taken so long. But Colin W says pretty much everybody put these in numbered from 5 to 1. Number 5, Smashers. I'm not sure what that is, but anyway. Number 4, Waterdeep Good Eats. Number 3, What Would Groomsh Do?
What would Groomsh do?
Number 2, Throm Want to Know Meaning of Life. and number 1, Smashers.
That's
Okay.
They're a barbarian, so there you go. That's Smashers.
It's probably his. It's probably his little his war cry or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, probably. And then Jonathan S. said, and he said these are from the point of view of his wizard character. Number 5, can wizards wear armor? Number 4, how to cartography or find maps of the Underdark. Number 3, how to get a drow girlfriend.
Someone's going through the Underdark. I see.
Number 2, how to earn money fast and easily.
Sure.
Number 1, where to find the best scrolls and spellbooks. And then he put a 0, which is a meta one. How to play Friends and Fortresses, a fantasy role-playing game where I play a level 9 teacher and use my leadership feat to inspire education class ability.
Aww.
And then the last one I want to say on Facebook was from Jason S. I had to mention this. What happens if you open a bag of holding underwater? Can I trap a gas in a bag of holding? Is this bag of holding authentic or a high-quality knockoff? Can I get a male satchel of holding people won't call a purse? And grapple rules explained. To which I responded, oops, looks like I just banned you from the podcast. My bad. Because of my disdain for the bag of holding and grappling.
And grapple rules.
Which at the moment, that episode has not come out yet. So,
okay.
Last week we did an episode all about grappling. It took about an hour and 45 minutes to explain grappling in 3rd edition. So, yeah. Only got a couple on...
Not even to explain it, just to read the rules.
Pretty much. Pretty much, yeah.
It's like we didn't even really explain. I just kind of read the rules.
Right. On Facebook, we only got a couple. I'm sorry. On Reddit, we only got a couple. Hoosier Trip said he has a black dragonborn fighter. Why do people hate Tiamat? Are kobolds just baby lizard folk? Can I become a zombie when I grow up? Are Warforged just puppets for halflings?
What?
And how do I get rid of this rash under my armor?
Oh, armor rash.
Armor
And then,
rash. That's a big problem.
Yeah, that would be a good one for web DM.
Yeah.
P-Story Pancakes says, and P-Story Pancakes was in the Roll20 game.
Oh, yeah,
last
yeah.
week.
That's right.
She says, my current character is a scoundrel in a smuggling gang in Blades of the Dark with a bad opium addiction. He'd probably Google good opium den in Silkshore, best place to sell weird artifacts, or more recently, how to handle ghost encounter. I met a ghost, help, and what to do when meeting ghost.
Right, yeah. You always got that, like...
That's another one my character would be Googling.
You always got that like one search. You keep rewording it just to see like if anything else comes up. So it's just like your last 5 are the same question, just in 5 different ways.
Yep. And then on Twitter, Justin from Crit Academy says, "Why are adventurers such jerks? Where can I find a secret assassins guild?" Which I think is a great question to Google. How do I learn the invisibility spell? Best poison to deal with snotty elves, and best way to deliver poison anonymously. And then DM Carlos to finish this out. I'm looking for my father, Obron Althel. He was last seen... ... That was posted to Facebook. He has a job search, ship's crew. Google, punchline for a joke. A wizard, a warlock, and a cleric walk into a tavern. And then he would Google, what is the death curse?
Uh-oh.
And finally, he would Google, how big are a zombie T-Rex's teeth?
Okay.
So there you go. Good responses all around. And then today, for this week, our question is going to be, have you ever played out a character's afterlife? If so, what was it like?
Ooh.
So
okay.
do either of you have any experience with playing out a character's afterlife?
No,
I was on
don't.
the astral plane once, but was not dead. I don't know.
Okay.
That doesn't really count. But
Yeah.
I guess not. I mean, like, definitely done like sort of kind of thought about like post campaign stuff, but not afterlife. No.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I haven't really dealt with this myself, but I would love to do it more. I think I submitted it to Crit Academy. I don't think they've ever put on their show, but one DM tip I would give out to pretty much DMs everywhere is like use characters' afterlife. If a character dies, whether they're going to get brought back or not, role play what happens in that character's afterlife. It could be that, maybe if that character isn't going to be brought back, you could give that character a cool send off because the players get to find out what that character is going to do, in the have the mountains of Celestia or whatever plane they go to, or meeting their deity or whatever. Or if they were like, a big jerk and they are going to some sort of a less positive afterlife, maybe role play what happens, Carcery or the Abyss or something like that. Role play out what happens. Maybe even like if a player shows up and they're the only player that week, like nobody else shows up, and one of their characters died and went to hell or something like that, role play out a short little adventure for that dead character, and maybe something cool happens to them, and maybe they'll show up later in the campaign as a demon or something.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that has a lot of potential. Unfortunately, I haven't used it much in my own game.
Right.
But I would love it if some listeners had gone through something like that.
Yeah, that is something to think about in a campaign, with like whether or not whatever setting you're in has some form of actual like afterlife or anything like that. Like, do they just go to one of the planes, or like what happens?
Yeah. So yeah, I hope we get some good responses. However, if they're like me, I imagine we probably won't get too many.
Sure. But
it'd be cool if we did. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for questions for today. So I want us to, as we're winding down, we should sit back. Let's take a deep breath. And let's toss another log onto the funeral pyre. So today's funeral pyre story was submitted by Mjolnir620 on Reddit. And they said, I was a young, fresh-faced first-level cleric. My companion and I came to a fork in the dungeon. He went left, I went right. I chose wrong. And that's it. Short, simple, and to the point.
Oh.
So let's raise a glass in memory of this first-level cleric who chose right and chose wrong at the same time. Clink. All right. So, Jessica, would you like to once again tell our listeners about your show, any projects you're working on, how they can reach you, anything else you want to tell them about?
Sure. So you can, again, if you're interested in our podcast, you like to reboot the TV series, or you want to watch it for the first time, you can check us out. We're incominggamecast.com. If you like art and comics, you can follow me on social media. I'm at Stervino Lady on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm working on far too many comics right now at this moment. None of them are out yet, but they're all being worked on. And I'm also selling, I got some t-shirts and some prints on Threadless, on InPrint, and that's all at Stervino Lady. So if you're like D&D or mead labels or artwork in general, you can check me out and hit me up.
Did you say mead labels, like the drink?
Yes. One of the people I play D&D with makes mead. So I've made multiple mead labels for his mead.
Awesome.
There you go. All right. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, stories for the funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict, or on Twitter at InPartyConflict for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. There's a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is our YouTube channel where we play video games. You can also find our stream of arcade games, and then Griff and I are continuing our adventures through. I don't know what we're playing at the moment. I think Jet Force Gemini.
Okay.
I'm playing through that. It's interesting. I never played it, and going back to Nintendo 64 third-person shooters.
Yeah, that's got to be rough.
It's rough. It's fun, but it's rough.
Cool. All right. Speaking of video games, if you'd like to submit some of your childhood memories of going to the arcade, you can write those to me in an email or record it yourself and send it to me that way at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. I also have the first episode of the Arcade Memories podcast up. I'm going to try to get, now that the stream is over, I'm going to try to get the second episode up within the next few days. At the moment, I think that's all I have material for. So if I get more submissions, I will make more episodes. So send those to me. Again, arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. And you can head over to bit.ly/InterPartyConflict to take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for doing it, you'll get 2 free printable board games courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hackers RPG. So, Jeff, until next time.
Podcast over. Jessica wins.